how they're being made.
How are COVID vaccines being produced faster?
Usually, vaccine testing and production are separate steps. But because of the pandemic, vaccines are being developed on parallel tracks. So both steps are happening just at the same time.
How are the vaccines being tested?
Right now, several different COVID vaccines are in testing. Each go through multiple clinical trials with up to thousands of volunteers.
How do vaccines get approved?
Not all COVID vaccine versions will make it to the final stages of testing and approval. Produced vaccines that do not pass clinical trials will be destroyed. But for those that do pass, a team of medical experts will examine test results and possible side effects. If the vaccine is effective and safe, it gets approved and gets to you. Go to covidvaccinewa.org to learn more. A message from the state of Washington.
This is Big Poppy, host of Jazz from the Cabinets. Join me each week for a listening tour of the first century of jazz, an eclectic mix of Dixieland, big band, cool jazz, bebop, contemporary jazz, world jazz, all jazz in all forms. That's Jazz from the Cabinets with Big Poppy on Rainier Avenue Radio, streaming worldwide on RainierAvenueRadio.world.
Atlantic Street Center has been serving the children, youth, and families of the Seattle-King County area since 1910. We partner with families and communities to raise healthy, successful children and youth through services including counseling, early learning, youth development, domestic violence, and education support for school-aged children. Committed to serving the African-American community, Atlantic Street Center provides services and support for all marginalized people. Learn more at AtlanticStreetCenter.org.
You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Check us out on social media, Facebook and Instagram, Rainier Avenue Radio.world, and on Twitter at Rainier Ave Radio.
Welcome to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. It's me, Tony B, and this is our special broadcast of the impacts of the coronavirus on South Seattle and surrounding communities. Good afternoon. The coronavirus variant is apparently running amok. I think I need to verify this. So I read, I believe that 99.5% of the coronavirus cases that are out there right now that are for folks who are testing positive are folks who have not been vaccinated. So, what are we going to do? How are we going to deal with this? At this point, we have an individual decision that folks need to make for themselves about what they want to do. We also have overwhelming evidence that, at least so far, the vaccine is proven to be safe. And I don't know. That's not what the discussion is about today. But since this is the discussion every week about the impacts of the coronavirus, just something for everyone to think about. Where do we go from here in regards to keeping everyone safe? Coronavirus is still a political football. The vaccine itself is a political football. But what's real is the surge in cases of COVID-19 spurred by the Delta variant and the impact that this is having. We'll see. We'll definitely be keeping an eye on that and letting you know. We've opened up, 2 weeks? Could we be possibly looking at shutting down again? I don't think anybody wants that to happen. But we will keep you informed right here on Rainier Avenue Radio.world every Friday from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock about the impacts of the coronavirus on South Seattle and surrounding communities. And the coronavirus impacted everything. I have a really special guest joining me on the program this afternoon, I would like to welcome Cindi Bright. Cindi, how are you?
Hi, Tony B. How are you?
Oh, under the circumstances, Cindi, I am fantastic.
Good.
This is going to be well, for one, coronavirus impacts everything. And so I am going to ask you about the impact of the coronavirus in the work that you do. But a lot of the time that we're going to be spending here is going to be talking about a new book that you wrote.
My pandemic project.
And if you are a regular listener of Tony B, or you listen to the Coronavirus Show, or you listen to Street Beat, for me, it's just about getting to the facts. And I've said before that I don't slobber on candidates, and that's fine if people do, if it's your favorite candidate. My thing is just to get to the gist of what the conversation is about. However, I do have to, even though she's not a candidate, I do have to make an exception because I'm so proud of Cindi Bright and everything that she has done from the moment that she came into Rainier Avenue Radio and said, I want to be on the air. It didn't take long for me to realize that she was going to be a star. And so before we get started with the interview, I just want to say, Cindi, what an amazing job you've done as a show host, as a political candidate, in bringing your issues and your concerns to the forefront in our community, and utilizing your platform to share your narratives. It's just been awesome watching your growth and watching you take this bull by the horns. And not to mention, Cindi steps up to the plate. There was a period of time where Rainier Avenue Radio kind of ran into a little crisis one day, and boom, guess who was there? Cindi Bright. So thank you, Cindi.
You're welcome, Tony B. I enjoy my show. I enjoy Rainier Avenue Radio, so it's awesome for me.
All right. Well, I talked a little bit about your background, a former political candidate and corporate HR director, and of course, the host of Heartbeat Radio that you can hear every Wednesday. Well, I guess you're on hiatus for about a month here, right? Is that right?
I will be. I take vacation in August, but
Okay.
yes, I have more shows this month. Yes.
But every Wednesday, 7:00, tune in live to Heartbeat Radio, airing right here on Rainier Avenue Radio. And then we re-air that same program on Sundays at 4:00 during our Women's Voices on Air. So a couple chances for you to catch Heartbeat Radio. Sometimes we re-air it on Friday morning too, but you can always catch it live on Wednesdays at 7:00. And then again on Sundays at 4:00. And of course, you can always watch on demand on YouTube or on our Facebook page. And then you can listen on demand as well. If you don't have time to watch, you're driving or something, just go onto our archive, and then you can check it out on Mixcloud as well. So a phenomenal program. Cindi does a wonderful job of interviewing guests, takes them to task sometimes.
You've with my fierceness, I see.
And then also brings out incredible things in the folks that she does interview sometimes. So shameless plug for Heartbeat Radio for everybody who is listening right now, and my guest Cindi Bright. But Cindi, the reason why you're on here today is you have just recently released a book, The Color of Courage: Crushing Racism in Corporate America. Well, since we began talking, I know that this was a passion of yours and something, again, that I knew that you were going to take head on. And thank you, Daniel, for putting that. The Color of Courage: Crushing Racism in Corporate America by Cindi Bright. So let's start off by having you give us a little, because I don't want to just read your bio when I have you here with me on the air. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background? And I'm going to say before corporate America, maybe you can share with us a little bit of your background about where you grew up, how you grew up, what you thought you wanted to be when you grew up, and some of the journeys to get to this point? Just give us some background on you, Cindi. And for those of you who are watching right now, who are Heartbeat listeners, I don't know if Cindy's ever done this on the show or not. She's usually interviewing people. So share with us, Cindi, a little bit about your background.
Yeah, thank you, Tony B. I'm glad to be on Street Beat with you finally. So my whole background, I don't talk a lot about me personally, so that's something I need to do better of, and I get pushed a lot to be more open. My book does talk about me more. So I am not from Seattle, so I'm actually from the Bay Area. I grew up in Vallejo, so I come out of the...
money making Vallejo.
That's where I grew up. It's actually where my son was born, and I was a civilian in the Navy, and I was stationed at Mare Island Naval Shipyard. So I spent 13 years working for the Navy, and the Navy is what relocated my family up here in the mid-90s, and so that's how I got brought into the Seattle area. In the Navy, I kind of fell into the trajectory I'm on. My upbringing, my father was in the Air Force, and my father was also a union steward. He was an electrician and used to work on airplanes, and he used to fight a lot of battles that I wasn't really cognizant of until I got older, because he used to wake me up in the middle of the night because he was taking paralegal courses at nighttime. And this is, I'm one of the older people on the show. So back in that day, I was typing up his homework in the middle of the night. And I later came to realize that the homework that I was typing were interrogatories. So he was talking a lot about racism in the Air Force, and the colonels that he was naming and the different issues is the stuff I used to type. So I used to aspire to be a clerk typist. And that's literally how that's as big a vision as I saw for myself at that time. And so when I started working for the Navy, my father had said, grow up, get a civil service job. You'll always have a job. You'll always have benefits, and you can retire from there. And that was my father's generational thinking about careers.
I think that was a generational thinking of a lot of folks at that time.
And so I fell into, on my first day on the job, I was a clerk typist. I was 17 years old. I had graduated high school early, and the first day on the job, one of the women in the office quit. And so the supervisor gave me a pen, a pad of paper, and this little book. And she sent me to these meetings, and she said, just take notes and come back and talk to me at the end of the day. Well, those meetings I was being sent to were grievances and labor meetings, and the book she handed me was a labor contract. And so at 17 years old, with a high school education, I was learning about labor agreements and how the civil service function worked. And I began to see the trends that I'm actually talking about today, because most of my grievances and disciplinary hearings I used to sit in were full of brown and black people. And I couldn't understand that as a 17 and 18-year-old young girl. I was just listening to and writing notes and then disciplining all these folks. And so that's how I broke into HR. I never had intended to be in, it was called personnel back then. And then moving into the Seattle area when I was transferred here, that's when I stepped into corporate America more. So that's kind of how this whole path began. And in fact, I dedicate the book to my father. I tell him from the cotton fields of Jonesboro, Arkansas, to his grandson's now Stanford education, I write this book to help change trajectories for people, because I've seen it for a lifetime now, 3 decades of this stuff.
My guest again is Cindi Bright. The name of the book is Color of Courage: Crushing Racism in Corporate America. So let's fast forward a little bit, and your entree into what you're calling corporate America. And just to clear the air for anybody who may be unsure of what we're talking about when we say corporate America, what do you mean corporate America? What are you calling corporate America?
That's a good question, because my editor and I wrestled with this when we were editing the book. corporate America is very broad because it is literally the entire ecosystem of how healthcare works, how education works, how jobs work. That's the broader version of it. I'm mostly talking about organizations that are white collar organizations that have professional positions in it. And so I've worked in the Fortune 500 companies. So I touch on both in my book. But for the purpose of discussing most of the things in my book, it is about many of the large organizations that people step into, and it's where wealth is built. And so that's the lens of which I tell the story.
Mm-hmm. And Cindi, I'm gonna tell you, I have not had the chance to read the book. I want to read the book. If I have to catch up with you somehow, I will make that happen, because I really wanted to go through it and find an excerpt that I could read that would get me to the place that I want to be with this next question, and that would be getting into corporate America. Obviously, there was a point in time where you became either dissatisfied, or maybe you went into it dissatisfied. Maybe you went into it very open-minded and wide-eyed and found something that you hadn't anticipated finding. But ultimately, that's what I want to start out with right here. We've heard a little bit about your background and what led you into believing and thinking some of the things that you do based on that. But moving into corporate America, when that was your experience, did you go into this like, hey, I'm just here to do my job, or were you already, I'm a little bit sensitive about what's taking place here based off of the things that I've seen through my past experiences?
I did not go in with that lens. I went in happy, ambitious. I was in my 30s, excited to be inside of a corporation and learn some new things. So I came in with a completely open mind, and not carrying the heaviness of my prior experience. Because even though in the prior work I saw a lot of those things, the fire inside of me was not fully flamed yet at that time when I stepped into corporate America. Corporate America magnified things on a whole different level, because when you're working in a labor environment, the union contracts control the steps and the process for how you administer discipline. So it's a very, pardon the pun, black and white process that goes on that you follow. And so corporate America was nothing like that. So when I started seeing, because corporate America operates much more in the gray and starts to use people's opinions about other people instead of the way contracts were written to completely spell out the things that you do. And so that's when my eyes started to get open, because I began to really witness and see huge disparities in people. And as an HR, representative when I first went in, HR rep, HR manager, I had access to a lot of information that really started to get my attention about what's going on. So I didn't see that in civil service. Everything is already defined. So you all start at the same jobs, all start at the same level. You make, I started at $4.51 an hour. You had to be in that level for 6 months, and then you moved to step 2. Like, it was a very defined process. And so the gray and the latitude for someone else to decide to do something different didn't exist then. And it's hugely how things are done in corporate America, which is based on opinions. So it's very, very different.
And you bring up a good point there. Again, just generationally, that was, for a while, it was, corporate America was the dream. Get into corporate America. You've made it. You're successful. And there are some differences in working with, again, like you said, that structure in particular for government positions. As you said, it's set. You work, here's the salary. Corporate America, you can negotiate. You would like to believe that the talents that you have, the skill set that you have, the toolkit that you have, allows you the opportunity to go beyond that set structure, because you're bringing unique things to the table. Is that accurate about corporate America? And we're going to get to some of the things that you talked about in it. But is that an accurate way to look at one of the differences between working for corporate America? You bring in unique skill sets, you bring in unique talents, and you can value yourself differently because it's not so structured.
I'd say yes to a degree. What you're describing is accurate. The flexibility around bringing your true self is one that I would say nowadays I don't see that to be the case. I see that to be more measured, particularly, my whole voice is about brown and Black people. And so that's a much more measured approach to all of these issues. There is flexibility, like you said, in salary negotiation, but how those are managed from the corporation's perspective, it varies. It has a huge variance in it. And so those are some of the issues I'm talking about. And particularly when it comes to pay, I think we'll probably talk about that, but I do share some things about that are not known, that only HR people know how some of these systems work. And so I'm sharing that with brown and Black readers to be able to discern a little bit and have a little bit more equipment for negotiations and equipment for themselves in their jobs.
Again, the title of the book is Color of Courage: Crushing Racism in Corporate America. Okay, let's start with the title of the book, Crushing Racism in Corporate America. Just in the title, and I'm going to ask the question because it is, what does that mean? Is there systemic racism in corporate America? Is it something that is individual to those who have had the privilege, and because they've had the privilege, those folks have a historical privilege that includes systemic racism embedded into the way that they think? What is it? Is it a vehicle that's just there, that's just being run by racists? Is it a systemically oppressive system that makes it even more difficult to get into if you are a person who is Black or brown?
Well, let's just start with the first part of your question. If you bring my book back up and look at the cover, there is some intentionality around why I say crushing racism. So you see the background cover is black and white, which is the issue at hand. The red stain that is on there is the stain of a wine glass, because I tell the story through a bottle of Syrah, and Syrah is my favorite varietal, but it's also that dark skinned grape that's got a lot of punch and fire to it. And so I use that as a metaphor for myself of speaking out about the issues around Black and white. So that's the intention around that cover. And crushing is a term in the winemaking industry. It's when you're crushing the grapes is when you're bringing out the best of the grape, right? You're stepping on it and pushing it out and getting it ready to be fermented and grown and bottled. And so the crushing to me is what is happening to brown and Black people also. So it's another analogy about what has happened and continues to happen to us. So there was intentionality around how I did that cover. In terms of the second part of your question about whether it's individual or system, it's a microcosm of America is how I describe it. And so everything you see happening in our country has been duplicated in corporate America. So you have a system that has been put in place. So outside of in the world, you have Karen who's at the Central Park and she sees a Black man bird watching and she calls 911. Well, there is a comparable system inside of corporate America. It's called the performance management system, which is the 911 of corporate America. And it's the system that is used to destroy brown and Black lives. And so I spelled that out about what that looks like, because there are processes that I was responsible for. I was responsible for calibration, which is looking at performance ranked against each other. And I can tell you that in all my years, we did stack ranking. I don't care what any of these organizations say. They are doing stack ranking and looking at who's getting access to bonus dollars and who falls on the bottom percentage of that. And that's where mostly the brown and black people end up. I've seen it my entire career. And so
I want to pause there just for a second, because I want to make sure we're all on the same page. Because you listed off a bunch of words there. That,
I'm sorry, I'm in my corporate mode, Tony B.
So you said performance. What was that term? Performance?
The performance improvement plans, or the performance management system.
And what is that?
That is a yearly process that is done to inform employees how their performance is in the organization. And so there can be a 1 to 5 rating scale, where 3 says that you're meeting expectations, 4 is above, and 5 is exceptional, and then anything below a 3 is considered marginal. So it's a way to calibrate people against each other inside of the organization, so you can see who your high performers are and who your low performers are. Again,
now, are you saying that within that ranking system there exists racism?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. We're going to go back to that and explain to me why this and how this ranking system could potentially be racist. Isn't the deal you do a good job, you get the credit for doing a good job, whoever you are, and that's not really something that's questioned because it's quantifiable. You can see, well, you did do a good job or you didn't do a good job.
Well, you can make it would seem that would be the case, I guess, is how I would answer it. But you have to understand that performance in professional positions has a lot of ambiguity to it, and achievements and without looking at obstacles in people's way are often at the opinions of the supervisors or middle management. And if you have leaders who are in middle management or first line supervisor ranks who hate on brown and black people, won't be obvious to everybody else, but that's what's inside of them. They will concoct things to make it match the lower performer issues. And so performance appraisals or performance goal setting and all of that is there's subjectivity to it. And so when you have the voice of people who are looking for what's wrong with us, then that tends to be the pattern of feedback that people get, that and then they are being coached and counseled to become something that they're not. And so what I'm pushing for is corporate America to becoming something that they're not, because they have been so white nationalized inside of these organizations. It has become so normal to do this to folks that they're now on the carpet. Because if you look at, I can talk forever. I don't want to jump around while you're trying to ask me direct questions. So I'll pause there.
Okay. And you are free to jump around, by the way. I don't want to hear my voice. I want to hear your voice and your thoughts. You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio World. Yes, this is our special Impacts of the Coronavirus on South Seattle and surrounding communities show. And again, coronavirus has impacted everything. I'm excited to be able to ask Cindi if and how coronavirus has impacted corporate America, and if that has been part of the change that's been taking place that we've seen in some instances where people are becoming, whatever this means, woke, or businesses are changing some of the ways that they do their business practices. We're going to find out that information. We're going to get more into the book, Color of Courage, Crushing Racism in Corporate America. Again, my guest is Cindi Bright, also the show host for Heartbeat Radio. We'll be back to talk more about the book, Color of Courage, Crushing Racism in Corporate America. And we're going to get into some of the deets, if you will, about why Cindi decided to write this particular book. We'll be back right after this.
This is Paul Pearson, host of Star Time. And when I'm not using my GPS to navigate the land of 1,000 dances, I'm listening to Rainier Avenue Radio .world.
Wash your hands, don't touch your face, wipe things down, clean up your space. When you cough and sneeze, do responsibly. If you feel you're getting ill, isolate at home and chill. No, you're not alone. Please pick up your phone and call 206-477-3977. King County 206-477-3977. Public Health 206-477-3977. King County 206-477-3977. Public Health Community Radio Station will provide you with more information. Say Rainier Avenue Radio. Your community radio station will provide you with more information. Rainier Avenue Radio.
What's on your heart? Are you exhausted at the lack of progress for people of color in business, politics, and life? This is Cindi Bright, the host of Heartbeat Radio. Each week, we explore this heart condition of the country that is affecting you and me. We have real conversations about what's necessary for change. It's time to change this dialogue. Will you join this Heartbeat weekly, Wednesdays at 7 p.m. on Rainier Avenue Radio?
Yo, what's good? It's D-Money, and you should definitely check out Fresh Juice every Wednesday, 9 to 11 Pacific, right on Rainier Avenue Radio.
With pint-sized Patron, P-Treasy the Don. Y'all be sure to clean your mirrors as we play brand new hip-hop and R&B from locals and worldwide.
It's ID Yourself, a.k.a. Malcolm Flex. Make sure you check out Fresh Juice every Wednesday, Pacific Standard Time from 9 to 11 p.m.
And to get those exclusive interviews that we be doing.
Sipping a brand new fresh juice every single week.
Yeah. Every Wednesday, 9 to 11, Rainier Avenue Radio.
Yeah.
You know you can't get enough of Rainier Avenue Radio. .world.
Welcome back to Rainier Avenue Radio .world. It's me, Tony B. Our special broadcast of the impacts of the coronavirus on South Seattle and surrounding communities. Our guest from Heartbeat Radio, 7 o'clock on Wednesdays, live every Wednesday, Cindi Bright. Cindi just authored a new book, The Color of Courage, Crushing Racism in Corporate America. Cindi, a little bit about her background. If you're just tuning in right now, you're going to have to go back to the beginning of the show, and Cindi did a wonderful job of giving us some information on how she grew up, and I guess you could say that potentially led to what I'll call the courage to fight these things that you're talking about right now. And so I looked up the definition of corporate America. Corporate America gets its name from the corporations. Corporate America gets its name from the mainstream, usually high-profile corporations that are behind much of the United States economy. So if we're talking about corporations behind much of the United States economy, we're talking about money. And we're also talking about, I guess you would still say, fulfilling that goal of the pursuit of happiness, the American dream, taking care of your family, taking care of your loved ones, and the system in place. One of the ways that you can do that, of course, you can be an entrepreneur, but we have this thing called corporate America. Cindi, you were talking earlier, for a lot of folks, what you're told is, well, you go to school, get your education, get your degree, whatever that may be, and then you try and get yourself a good job in corporate America, and you work for 30 years, 40 years. Corporate America recognizes your talents. You grow. You get a raise. You get a higher job. Eventually, maybe you might become the president of the company, and you fulfill all of the promises that this country has to offer. Well, your book is called Crushing Racism in Corporate America. Is that not the way that it works? Tell me why what I'm saying is not the way that it works. How racism is interfering in perpetuating what we're supposed to understand that corporate America is for everyone.
Whew, I attempted to do that in my book.
I know.
I call it the ecosystem. And so what you were just referencing when you talk about, getting your education, getting a job, making money, raising, that was the idealist that I believed that to begin with. What I saw though, and what I personally experienced was I did fine. I did good for a period of time, but there's a phrase that, I've had a couple of mentors in my professional career, and they said the higher on the flagpole you go, the more your ass shows. And so people will be coming after you left and right. And so that was the spot on advice that someone gave me, and I didn't realize how egregious it was until I began to rise. And so while I'm rising, I'm trying to right wrongs for people. I was an HR director for several businesses. And so I worked to make sure that all of my people were compensated fairly, that I dealt with pay inequities, that I helped try to address performance things that were going on, that I helped try to put people into succession plans, which would line them up for management level jobs. That arguably is what we're all there for, but where equity is given inside of the companies is where it's game changing for people. And where equity is given is where we are being kept out at disproportionate rates and fired and put into those performance improvement plans at disproportionate rates, because that is a gatekeeping, middle management is a gatekeeper function, as is HR. And that's where power hungry white folks are clamoring and will do everything possible to not allow a Black person in, and particularly a Black woman. There's so much I say in my book about this, because that is fundamentally where the problem lies. If we can address the racism in these organizations, then it can start to open up the pathway for generational wealth for our families to be able to thrive and prosper too. And so that's what I'm fighting for, is for all of us to be able to prosper.
Before I get to the next question, Cindi, where can we get the book? How can folks pick up the book?
It's on, you can buy it. It's on Amazon, which I'm getting a lot of people cringing that I put it on Amazon, but it's a heavy book distribution, but you can get it anywhere books are sold. So the Barnes and Nobles, or you can go anywhere online books and get it. So you can go right from my website. It's right on the front landing page, and just click purchase, and it'll take you right to the checkout of buying it.
Okay. Why are some folks cringing because it's on Amazon?
Because people don't like Amazon. So it's just putting, and because Amazon are one of the corporate America organization that is arguably abusing brown and Black people. So lots of stuff on that during the coronavirus.
And I did talk a little bit about this earlier, but now again is a good place to, and so this is not something that is just unique to the individuals who are in positions of power. You're saying this is a system that's in place that perpetuates racism? Explain that. How that works, because you might have a company in San Francisco, you might have a company in New York, you might have a company in North Carolina, in Seattle. How is the system of corporate America oppressive?
Well, let's just talk about how you get into the system.
Okay.
You get into the system by, in theory, by applying for a job, and a recruiter is the person in contact with you and does the initial screening to see if you meet the qualifications. Mm-hmm. Now let's just start with, that's the at a basic level, the entry into an organization starts with a recruiter who is potentially not culturally competent and cannot connect dots of people's lives with lives that are not the white way. And so that's an entry point. That's part of a system. That's why I'm sure listeners know was so much controversy over even putting names on resumes anymore, because the recruiter is the person that's filtering through the pile of resumes and deciding who he or she brings forward into interview. So that's, again, a gatekeeping function that is keeping brown and black people out. There is a code word. I tell in my book, because there's a whole behind the scenes digging up dirt on people that goes on by HR professionals to try to find something on these folks to keep them out. That's done all the time. And so, again, that's the system in place. And so when you have different recruiters from different companies all sharing information, and one person has a bad thing to say about this person, brown and black people's lives are being dismissed and can't even get in the front door. That's number one. Number two is many coaches, people like me who work with people, encourage people to find out who the managers are, to actually go around the HR system and try to get in front of the right people so that they can avoid that gatekeeping trap that is keeping people out. Even in that process, it is very difficult because brown and black people, the organizations say they don't have candidate pools, but they failed to return people's emails and phone calls, respond to them, treat them with respect. Like the external people trying to get in, it's horrid. And in the larger the company, the more complex it is. And I get more people saying those things to me about, I can't get to that person. They don't respond. And that's the truth. So corporate America is its own worst enemy when it comes to progressing diversity, because they won't network with brown and black people. They won't take informational interviews with people. They don't respond to referrals. And so that is a system. So that's just at a basic level, getting in the front door. Once you get in, there's a whole, I have a whole theory about the life cycle of a black woman, because it's about 2 years before she's just being torn apart, because when she comes in and starts doing what she was brought in to do, the entire system is starting to pull her down, and her support is so thin because people don't want to stand behind black people. So that is a system at play. And so that hopefully helps you to understand more about what is going on inside and why we can't either get in and get the good paying jobs, or we are able to rise in good paying jobs, let alone have access to equity. We're game changing bonuses, which is where it's going to all the white folks. That game changing money is going there. Brown and black people are being kept down.
Again, you're listening to the impacts of the coronavirus on South Seattle and surrounding communities. My guest is Cindi Bright, author of the book, Color of Courage, Crushing Racism in Corporate America. For those of you listening, you know how I get down. I have interviews. I ask questions. Cindi, I appreciate you answering the questions. But for anyone who may be wondering, well, Tony is questioning her as if this doesn't exist. No, I'm questioning to find out information, but I can tell you from my own background, and I know, Cindi, you will understand this. And again, I'm going to get back to you, but for anyone listening, when I tell you that when I worked for a major media company, and that through that entire period of time, I was always not just the only black person. I was always just the only person of color in a position, in a director position, in a position to hire people and to be involved in the decision-making process. I know how I felt about that. And I know how I felt that I was targeted. And I know how I felt when people said, oh, that's great, you got it easy. And I kept saying, this is far from easy. What I'm trying to do and what I'm dealing with in this position. Have you found that for folks you've talked to, folks you've interviewed, folks that are finding themselves in similar positions where they're saying, "Wait a minute, this is a racist system that's in place," that there's a place to go to talk about this, that there are I don't know what to call them, safe places, places where folks of color can gather and organize and say, how do we support each other? And at the same time, like you're doing right now, try to make some changes in this system. When I'm alone, I'm by myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I spent a lot of lonely years too, Tony. It is difficult as an understatement to be the only, to be the one to navigate the internal politics that goes on when you are Black and in charge and have a little bit of power. It is difficult to carry the weight of all of the people of color on your shoulders because they come to you. They came to me a lot. They need it to be heard. They need it to be helped. It is very difficult when there's only one person. And then when you are attempting to influence something different with a whole, HR is the worst department. And I talk about it in my book, like it just needs to get cleaned out because there are power hungry people that get in there and they just love a little bit of importance and don't care who they hurt to, flex their muscles of power. And it's awful. I mean, I don't know if you watch the show, The Good Fight by any chance. It's a political show, but it's tackling that issue right now on the show around, I watched it last night, but it was around there's a whole scene around people don't want to have to deal with HR people. And so that is, in fact, what is going on. I mean, I was criticized heavily because I sat in the business. I didn't sit in HR for the last many years. And people didn't like the fact that I just didn't play their stupid, petty games that, I was actually there to help run a business, progress the business, and progress the people. And so, it's a challenge. It is not easy to do.
What the other part of that was, again, I mentioned groups, organizations, where folks can say, hey, this is something that's going on. Can we get together and talk about this? Is there something that we can do to organize? Do these things exist? And again, the book is called Color of Courage, Crushing Racism in Corporate America. So whatever your ethnic background is, my guess is Cindi is writing this book because it is things that she experienced personally, things that she has seen, heard, things that, again, are out there that are probably in a lot of instances not talked about. And I brought up my own personal experience, not to be part of the story, because there was so much to do. As the one Black person, I couldn't spend all of my time talking about the racism that I was facing. But there weren't any groups. There were always, Black journalist organizations, but no one really confronted the issue of the systemic racism that was taking place in corporate America. Have you found there to be a proliferation recently of organizations and groups? Is this something that you did because, okay, I think my voice is going to be heard now? Or do you feel like this is still, something being swept under the rug, something that you need to shout about? And of course you're doing that. That's something that you need to raise awareness to because it's not happening. Or are we moving in a direction? Is there a change underfoot right now?
I think it's both, Tony B. I know I do get contacted by people and have clients who are genuinely trying to move this needle. So I would say, from my perspective, what I'm seeing are the mid-sized companies that are trying harder. That's just my lens on it, that they're trying. The larger companies say they are, I don't know. It doesn't feel that way. It feels like a lot of verbiage, but no action. You can catch it in the news every week. In fact, in a couple weeks, I will be having on my show the two attorneys down in San Francisco who just got this $15 million discrimination settlement for Black women in Kaiser Hospital. And so I sense that the bigger corporations, that there is an escalation of class action and Black people coming together to take more stands about these issues. And so I want to say that there's going to be more movement in that regard. I've actually positioned myself to aim to help corporate America with this, because I have a unique lens in this whole situation, and I aim to tackle what they don't have historically not touched. And so what they don't touch are the gatekeepers, where they're not touching. I'm just going to say it, that I think the disproportionate harm happening to Black women is at the hands of white women. And so to address what is happening in corporate America is going to require corporate America to address white women. You know, we can sit and talk about it's all white male dominated, and it is, but the white women are the ones upholding that and guarding it to protect so that they have access, and they're keeping out the brown and Black people. Only until corporate America gets real with itself about that issue, because that's the core of it. And so who it has the courage to do it? That's the questions I'm asking and pushing for, because they're going to have to learn the things that they can do to us without the blink of an eye is what they're going to have to start doing to some of these women. And so that's my lens on where I think change is needed.
Again, my guest is Cindi Bright, author of the book Color of Change: Crushing Racism in Corporate America. You can find this book everywhere, right, Cindi? Barnes and Nobles, everywhere you can buy books. What about placing an order? Same deal online. Just go to Barnes and Noble or Amazon, and you can get it online there.
Yes. Yeah. You can also get it. It's in hardcover, soft cover, and in the Kindle version. So.
All right. I'm going to move on here a bit, but I'm going to digress just for a second. I'm teaching a class right now to students 13 to 17 years old. And one of the exercises that we did was we went through, it's a media class about voice and your information and where your information is coming from. And one of the interesting things that we do is we take a look at who's giving us our information. So we take a look at print media, the leaders in print media, and they're all male and white. In the 60s. We took a look at digital media, and the leaders who give us the digital media services, they're all male and white, except for Sunshine from Google. It's the one person that's not white. We took a look at television and who the leaders are. They're all male and white. And it's interesting that you bring up white women as well. And I want to see you, when I just told you what I just told you, but you say, well, maybe the biggest problem is white women. Why do you say that?
Because they're upholding that good old boys system to generate their own, to protect and keep their own privilege and power. And I have a whole section. I have a section on the GOB, which is the good old boys. I call it the 10 Commandments of the GOB. And then I have a section on white women and what they're doing to uphold that. And so women could literally change this world, because the white guys, they are, it's just every corporation. I'm like you, Tony B. I pull up before I meet with people. I pull up and look at all of them, and it's just always all white guys. And if they have a person of color, it tends to be an Asian person. So they just find us to be inferior. And so that's how I'll say the white women have the power to change that. I've talked to many white male executives, and I've asked them to talk to me off the record and answer the questions for me. Why are women not making it into executive suites, and why women are not making it into the boardrooms? And one executive asked me, could he be frank with me? And I said, yes. And he said, because we don't want bitches in the boardroom, Cindi, and we have seen how women are towards each other. And that was a powerful thing for a white man to say to me. And because they recognize this very issue that I'm talking about, the women tearing down other women.
Wow. My guest again, Cindi Bright. Cindi, over the course of the last 15 months, as I mentioned before, the coronavirus impacted everything. The perception would be that big corporate America is changing after all of the things that took place, where we saw again that the coronavirus exacerbated the things that were already in place, that were problems for people of color, people who were already on the fringes, who needed that safety net. The coronavirus, again, followed by George Floyd and that moment and what it brought. And so the perception was that corporate America was becoming more aware. Corporate America was changing. Corporate America was beginning to realize that it needed to do something to fix what it had inherently been responsible for. Have you seen changes in corporate America over the last year that you can say they're moving in the right direction? Or is this just a smokescreen that we're getting right now, smoke and mirrors to just get through this period of time where there is, again, more awareness created to the discrepancies when it comes to who gets what and who doesn't get?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, because I think it's unfolding as we speak. So I will say, on one level, I do think I am hearing the questions are being asked. So let's just talk about coronavirus, the impact of brown and Black people. There is a lot of rub going on from at least the clients that I talk to, that brown and Black people don't want to have to go back into the workplace. They want to stay remote and not have to be in those toxic racist environments. So, to be determined how corporate America handles that issue.
And kids don't want to go back to school.
Correct. So that's all to be determined, right? So I have to believe, as a former HR executive, that there's a lot of meetings going on trying to figure out how best to deal with those issues. I would also say, though, if you look at the website employersforequity.org, and that's the number 4, that is corporate America, all belonging to that organization. Now, they made some statements after George Floyd died. I haven't noticed, that was a year ago, I haven't noticed much movement with them. They hired an executive director recently, but they hired somebody that's more of a program manager than a visionary leader. And so how I interpret that is staying in the safe zone and still just wanting to execute against diversity programs, which will never render the results that they aim to get. I'm not in those meetings, so I can't speak for them. I can just tell you what the optics look like. So, I got to be hopeful that some organizations are going to start to get it. I have to be hopeful about it, because what else can we do, right?
Again, my guest is Cindi Bright. Cindi, even though we're at the same radio station, the coronavirus has limited the opportunities for us to cross paths. And I just enjoy talking to you. It had to be over the air, but it's just been great having this conversation with you and getting to dialogue again and discuss things. I want to give you an opportunity for final words here. Whatever you want to say about the book, about corporate America, about what's going on now, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I enjoy talking with you too. I've only had you on my show one time. And so every time I talk to you, it feels like it goes by really quick. So, and I will get you that book. I have your book here. I think my closing words are, look, I say that my book, my book is for my brown and Black readers. I'm validating them, that their experiences and the things that they're going through is real. And I gave information to try to equip them for themselves, to be able to empower them to understand more. For my white readers, I encourage we need the white people who have the power to help us move this mountain. And so that's why I think my book will be interesting, especially when you read my story, which I didn't even talk about on today, but the chapter 1 is a story you will not be able to put the pages down when you read what happened to me. And so
that's why we need them to buy the book.
Buy the book. Let's get this on an Amazon or a New York bestseller list. Let's just get this book out there for people to see and read. And again, you can get it right from my website, which is cindibright.com. The purchase button is right on the front page, and you can go do that. thank you for having me on, Tony B. Thank you to all the listeners who want to learn more and try to do more to help us in this radical movement for change.
Well, thank you, Cindi, for shining light on something that doesn't have nearly enough light on it. It's not something that's talked about. I know that when you do something like this and you challenge the system that's in place, that's why I would assume the Color of Courage part comes in, because people will come after you, and of course try to discredit you. So thank you for taking the step, in particular in the times that we are in right now, where there is an awareness to social change that needs to take place. Again, my guest, Cindi Bright, author of the book Color of Change, Crushing Racism in Corporate America. Every Wednesday at 7 o'clock, you can find Heartbeat Radio. You won't get her interview, but you'll hear Cindi interviewing other people, and sometimes putting the leather on them. And just does a great job. Make sure and catch Cindi but I think we'll be doing reruns, maybe not. When are you going to be back live again?
Next week.
Oh, you will be back live.
Yeah, next week. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you were taking all of August.
Just August. Next week is the 21st. I have.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
In the wrong month.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're in the wrong month.
Okay, so you still got some time, Cindi.
Yeah.
Again, congratulations on the book, Color of Courage, Crushing Racism in Corporate America. Keep on doing what you're doing. This has been the authentic Cindi Bright from the day that we first began having conversations. And it's wonderful, again, Cindi, I just got to say, it's wonderful to see how you've evolved over the air with your show, and then taking the next step. And doing the things. And I didn't even talk about running for office. We didn't even talk about that.
Well, you'll have to have me come back on with you after you read the book.
Yes, I did. You know, when I did, that's one thing I'm going to say. See, I wanted to read the book before we had this conversation, so I didn't get it.
It'll be for sale forever, so we can have me back on.
You know, and I could have done that too. So shame on me. I just could have just ordered it. And then I could have.
Yeah, I have copies here for you.
and then I could, and I think I'll buy one anyway. You don't have to send me a copy. I will buy one. I could have just done that in the first place. So everybody out there who's watching right now is thinking, "Oh, I want to interview Cindi." Don't have her give you a book. Go buy the book.
Yes.
All
Thank
right?
you for that pitch. All right.
Okay, Cindi, that's it. That's all the time I have. That's going to do it for the kid. We've got more coronavirus coming up next. It's me, Tony B. This has been the impacts of the coronavirus on South Seattle and surrounding communities, saying, remember, whether you believe you can or whether you believe you can't, you are probably right. I'm out.